Reserve. The root of all our evil, it begins with the Federal Reserve. Hey, yeah, well, let's go back in time when everybody was so proud of a man.
I'm Tommy Salmons. This is year 0. So today we have a special episode. After Renegade University weekend in Lockhart, I sat down with Buck Johnson and Matt Erickson to record for, I don't know, about 50 minutes or so. Not quite an hour. Buck wanted to go watch a football game, and I had to go jump on the lake, so we all had things going on. And so we wanted to squeeze in some time to sit down. Oh, and Matt had his wife and his son who were coming back from putting the son to sleep. So we all sat down and had a little conversation, had a good time. The entire weekend was fucking amazing. If you weren't there, I wish you were, because we had such a blast. As you hear, the dogs are playing in the background. And, you know, that's just part of year 0. But as I told all you motherfuckers, the Libertarian Institute Fall Fund Drive has started. So go to libertarianinstitute.org. Throw in a couple of bucks, man. Show support for all the great podcasts at the Libertarian Institute. Show support for the great writers that are working there. Keep our lights on, man. Got to keep the lights on. Got to keep us operating. The Libertarian Institute is one of the places, one of the only places where you will find people trying to push back against tyranny and the COVID regime and really trying to help people find individual liberty. So go to libertarianinstitute.org and donate. Please, please, please keep us all rolling at the Libertarian Institute. As always, RyanBunting.com. For all of your graphic design needs, go to RyanBunting.com. Ryan Bunting is a great Ryan Bunting, and he's also the only Ryan Bunting I know. He calls himself a libertarian and an anarcho-capitalist, but he's gotten kicked out of the Libertarian Party in Delaware as far as the national party is concerned. And so that tells me that Ryan Bunting is just a dude. And I'm kind of just a dude myself. So go support that just a dude and see the work he's done for me and Pete and others if you have graphic design needs. Also, check out his book, Project Manicore. It's pretty fucking good. Thank you, Tom Burton, for the music. This has been a long fucking intro, and it's at 3 minutes. And I'm just going to keep rambling and rambling and rambling and just keep y'all fucking, like, waiting to hear this fucking episode where I talk shit and me, Buck, and Matt have a good time just after Renegade University.
Yo. So this has been a hell of a fucking weekend, and I'm sitting here with two of my favorite people, Matt Erickson and Buck Johnson, eating the pizza and smoking the reefer. So
we won't say who's doing what.
What's going on, guys?
Matt, you go ahead and you tell them what's going on, because I have a longer answer.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot. This has been a fun weekend. I've really enjoyed this. I learned that Cody Wilson has a lot more to him than I thought was there, and I don't mean that as a backhanded compliment. I saw him as kind of like the gun guy, you know, but that guy's got some philosophical depth that I have a whole bunch of content I have to go consume to find out, to learn more. But yeah, this whole weekend has been fantastic. I really enjoyed driving out here with my wife. And we've been scoping out this area. We really like Lockhart, and we're gonna go drive up into Austin this evening and have dinner and see what more of Texas is about. So
yeah, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. We I guess I should tell everybody this. We're at the Renegade University weekend at Buck's house this weekend. Y'all be listening to this afterwards, but we have all had a blast. I had friends come in from New Hampshire and New York and Phoenix. And guys I'd never gotten to meet up with, and so it was great. But I think the highlight, and it was something I was telling everybody, like the highlight of my weekend was Friday night when everybody walked out the door. Like Thad's like leading this parade out the door, and Scott's directly behind him. So I'm like waving to Scott, and Thad like immediately picks me out of the crowd and gives me a big hug, and I'm like, oh dude, like I'm honored. Like you come to me first, like that's awesome. But then I promised Top Lobster I would get with Cody Wilson about a design that Top Lobster made of Cody Wilson. And so I'm showing Cody this design, and we're talking, and I'm wearing my Libertarian Institute shirt. And he's like, well, what's the Libertarian Institute? So I was like, well, that's Scott Horton's gig, right? And he was like, Scott Horton, I know the name. And so I had the opportunity to tell Cody Wilson about Will Grigg, introduce Cody Wilson to Scott Horton, and listen to Scott Horton and Cody Wilson banter for about 45 minutes.
Oh my God.
And that was like the highlight. I was just like, I can die happy now. It's almost like introducing Cody Wilson to Ross Ulbricht. Because we'd all have 3D printed nukes by now. Yeah. And it's like that kind of idea, you know?
That's fantastic. That's great. That reminds me a little bit of not to name drop or whatever, but I was the one who introduced Thad and Hotep to each other.
Oh, yeah.
I talked to each of them, and I reached out to both of them and said, hey, would you guys be interested in talking to each other? And they hit it off. And that's been the coolest thing. So then they did that conversation with Brian McWilliams a couple of months ago where they were all just completely trashed and got more trash throughout it. Yes. And so that for me was, I felt the same way. Like sitting there, I was like, I introduced these guys to each other. So I didn't get to sit there and actually be there with them, but to sit and listen to them talk and see how close their relationship has gotten was very affirming to me personally. And that's something I said this yesterday when we were talking, that this feeling of this community that exists, we're all totally separate from each other. We never see each other except through these little boxes we carry around in our hands. And then you actually put like flesh and blood on someone when you meet them in person and realize that there's more power to these ideas than it seems like. Because that's the thing that's binding us all together. We're all here because we all believe in the same idea. There's a really wide array of cultures and interests and almost diverse values with everyone here, but there's that one thing that binds us all together, and that's cool. It's very new relative to human history that people are bound together by an idea that isn't necessarily visual. It isn't a specific trait that you look at somebody like, oh, they all look the same in a certain way, like their skin color or their height or something like that. It's something that's inside that you can't see. I guess it's kind of like an esoteric Hotep thing, but that idea of having that one invisible thing that binds everybody together. It's been powerful, and it's been reaffirmed for me this weekend.
And it's interesting for me because I was a musician. I guess I can't say I was a musician. I am a musician. I've played in bands for the last 20-something years, and a very common thing for me is playing at music festivals. And so I play one specific one almost every year. So you get to see the same people, the same friends. You make friends through that way. But it's interesting because a lot of the time, what's binding you there is the love for this specific kind of music. And 2020 was very eye-opening and it hits you like, wait, that's really all that was binding you to a lot of these people was just the love for this music. We very, 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 very much have very, very, very big differences as far as our values are going, because I would see these people that I thought, they're drinking buddies over the years, and you play in bands and open up with this guy, and you become friends that way, and then all of a sudden they're going, you need to take a vaccine. If you don't wear a mask, you're a bad person. They all went that route. Not all, but a decent majority of them. And so it's interesting because this has that music weekender feel to me. My wife and I have joked about it. It's like, oh, we're staying up late. You're getting up early, a little bit hungover, not too bad. You're kind of tired. Then you hit your stride through the middle of the day, and then you get tired in the evening. Very much the same feelings, but we have much more in common value-wise with the people at this event. And like Matt said, there's still a diverse group of people. Thad talks about sex work. Matt and I don't talk about that as much, but we do all have some similar values rooted in basically the anti-state the liberty aspect of what we're talking about at this weekend, and that's much more powerful. I don't know what kind of music Matt likes. I've not asked him one time. To a normal person, maybe it's like, well, yeah, that's not a weird thing. To me, coming where I came from, that's such a change for me.
Right.
And it's a nice change because, I mean, maybe we would have some bands that we both like in common, but it doesn't matter so much to me. As you know, like I could sit and probably have a good conversation with Tom Woods because we have some same values, but I know the music he likes is terrible. We know that. Sorry, Tom. And that's fine. I don't care. So I find that is
bullshit. Tom listens to excellent music.
I'm just getting that subtle dig, and I'm kidding. But you get my point. So
I would say we could take it outside, but we're already there.
We're outside.
Don't catch me outside.
What's funny is even more than we don't know you don't know what type of music I like. Both in the past, for me to be friends with someone and to like never talk sports with them was unheard of. All of my friends were almost all revolved around sports, and we even are aware of each other's interest in sports. We're both individually very passionate about sports, but we've never even talked about it with you. We just in passing we've mentioned it here or there, and that's really interesting. I hadn't thought of that until you were talking about music, but that's something where we even have this thing in common already
that we know
is there, and we don't even basically touch on it because of, again, I guess these ideas.
Yeah, it was like I had Adam Patrick on 2 weeks ago or something, and we all adore Adam. He's a fucking great. And
he's
like
Chad.
Talking to him, he's like it's
chat him.
I love talking to him because it's like very cathartic to have the conversations with him and like work through some of these fucking ideas, right? And we're all trying to figure things out. And you know, I kind of look at like somebody like Buck or myself or like Pete in our age in the way that we're coming at these topics, kind of like fathers, you know, like you got it, like the old school guys like Tom Woods, and these guys have been around for a long time, and they've kind of set out this whole like dynamic and kind of laid the foundation for us to really attack it. And then you have the 40, 50 year olds like me, Buck or Pete, and then you have this younger generation coming up. And one of the things I was talking with Adam about was it's almost like some of these guys are so afraid to confront what the evil that they hold within themselves. And whereas like when you get to my age, you've seen it enough within yourself that you're able to confront it, identify it, be okay with it, and conquer it, but understand like what you're capable of. And so when you're having some of these conversations, you'll have these guys that get really offended because they're like, "Oh, you're just being a statist," and it's like, no, we're not trying to be a statist. What we're trying to do is we're trying to identify the flaws that we see in ourselves and be aware that we see these flaws in other people as well, and that they're capable, just as capable, if not more capable, as the evil that we're already like confronting in our own lives. And so we have to kind of like take that on. And so you get like these really interesting conversations with Andrew of Popular Liberty or something like that. And I think there are some people that are afraid or unwilling to confront these aspects of their own persona.
Yes.
And so you end up with this kind of naive view of libertarianism.
Yes.
And this is where you get the infighting on Twitter and shit like that.
But because and I'm going to say this because I did this. Libertarianism, if depending on the angle you take with it, it gives you a protective cover to hide under. And by that I mean, I was one to say, well, if you vote for a Republican or a Democrat, you have blood on your hands because they went to war and you voted for them, so that's on you.
Right.
That's very easy, and I have these principles. I will not violate them. Well, yeah, but you don't ever win, so that's an easy cover to hide under, right? So you have no real skin in the game. And so I did it for a long time. It's like you can have these abstract arguments and say, I'm only voting for this. At one point I said I would never vote for someone unless they openly say, I will end the income tax. It's like, well, that's easy. Well, then I just don't ever win. My guy never wins. So it's easy for me to sit back and go, I've got these lofty goals and ideas. They're of no consequence because they don't go anywhere.
Right.
So I think there's this weird protective cover that it gives you, and it's a little bit of a chicken shit move to use it. But I did it for a long time. So maybe that's the stuff I recognize now in myself that I did. And so it's blatantly obvious now when I see other people doing it.
Right. Well, and when you see somebody making the same mistakes you make, it's very easy to get very frustrated with them.
Yeah.
You know, and it puts you in a position to where you're like, I don't even want to like this person. Whereas sometimes you got to take a step back and be like, yeah, I understand where he's coming from. And I was there.
It's nice to have empathy for them.
Right. Exactly.
They're not, some of the time, they're not doing it to be like malicious by any means. I wasn't.
Like, I mean, if you look at somebody like one of my favorite people in the world, and I love talking to the guy, like Asarchist. Like, I would never like insult him and tell him he's, you know, coming at it from a bad position. It's just sometimes I see him making the same like assumptions I made, right? And
Yes.
if you and then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I know where you're coming from, and I'll have the conversation with him. But he's like very receptive. You have other people that aren't receptive, that you can't have the conversation with.
Yes.
Right. And I don't understand, like, where does this? There's something hubristic about libertarianism that I can't quite place. You know, and it's almost like the younger the guy, the more hubristic they are.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. It's I was thinking about what Buck was saying, and it ties in with what you're saying, Tommy, about the libertarianism becomes almost a way for people to evade responsibility while advertising their virtue.
Correct.
And if there's an irony here, because libertarianism is something that, like, the idea of liberty, the idea of a self-governing society is, like, definitionally a society that takes responsibility for itself, which is something that within the entire game of politics is an exercise in trying to discard responsibility from oneself. That's what all the political parties are all in the game of, trying to pin the world's problems on somebody else. And then libertarians fall into that exact same trap, because they're saying, well, if it was up to me, you see, I have all these principles, and if everyone else was to live by my principles, then everything would all be grand, and we wouldn't have all these problems. So actually, it's everybody else's fault that the world is the way it is. If you guys would just listen to me, then everything would be fine. And that itself is a shirking of responsibility, because it's your fault too.
Yeah.
Because if you have these great ideas and people aren't interested in hearing them, if the ideas are as good as you claim them, as you claim that they are, then perhaps the problem is you. You're the one conveying those ideas. People aren't interested in them. So perhaps it's the medium. And if you haven't at least considered this, then I think that's even more evidence that it is you, that you are the problem. Because if you haven't even wrestled with this, then I can imagine there's a lot of people who I'm sure who have confronted this idea, who've thought about it, who've wrestled with it. And I told someone this weekend that my goal is to be critical but not combative. And I know sometimes that it may seem like I'm lobbing grenades or being provocative, and I am trying to be provocative because it helps advance the message.
Right.
But my goal ultimately is to be critical, because I think that most people who are within the libertarian community, I think the vast majority of people are well-meaning. Yes. I think that they are they genuinely believe what they're saying.
Yeah, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. That's exactly where I'm going.
You have to kind of look at the unintended consequences all the time.
Yeah.
And like I said, and I mean, what are you, 30?
32.
32.
Yeah.
So you're still a little bit younger than we are. Yep. And this is why I don't include you. And it's not an insult to not include you into kind of the Papa role. But Buck and I and Pete's 52. I'm 42. You're
44.
44. Yeah, I knew you were right around the same age. You got Shane Hazel, who's in his 40s. I think he's 41 or 42. So we're all we're kind of looking at this and we're going, All right. Like we've lived, like we've experienced some things that a lot of these younger guys haven't experienced, you know? And that's why when I'll like last night, I'll pull you aside and I'll have a conversation with you, right? It's not to insult you. It's just, hey, like, let's talk about these things and see if what we can't work out. And that's, there's somewhat a position of wisdom that we're trying to pass down. And there's a lot of the young kids that may have read like more than I have read. That's very possible. I didn't run into libertarianism until I was 39 years old. So it's very possible that these guys have read much more than I have read. Thank you, baby. But it's like, yeah, but I have something to offer that you don't have, and it's life experience. And some of these guys are not willing to accept that. They think, well, I've read, you know, every Rothbard book, and you've only read half of them, so
Right.
I know more than you.
Sure.
And it's like, okay, book reading is one thing, but life experience is another.
Yeah.
And you've never fed 5 fucking kids. I have. So let's talk about that.
There's a difference between knowledge and wisdom.
Right. Exactly.
Yes.
You know, my grandpa had this saying when I was growing up. He told me, he goes, a smart man learns from his own mistakes. A wise man learns from other people's mistakes. So you have a choice in your life to be wise or to be smart. Like, what are you going to choose? And I chose to be smart, and it hurt. You know, it smarts.
Nicely done.
That was slick. That was slick.
You know, so so whenever I talk to like you, I may disagree with you on like 1-2% of things, but like 98% of the shit we agree on. It's like, I'm not gonna fucking tell Buck to go fuck himself because I disagree with him about one thing. It's like Matthew Ho. Have you ever talked to Matthew Ho?
I'm not.
Oh, dude, he's one of the greatest interviews to ever.
Okay.
I love the guy, but he's left wing economically. But he's
Okay.
the most anti-war guy you'll ever fucking meet in your life.
Right.
Why the fuck am I gonna like? Why? Yes, I met him through Scott, actually. Yeah. So why the fuck am I going to tell Matthew Ho to go fuck himself because I disagree with him on economics?
Right.
You know what we're going to do? We're going to do a fucking podcast on economics, and we're going to be laying out our fucking points and fucking just talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we love each other, we respect each other. And he's a great guy, and he spends all his fucking time working with people that have PTSD.
Okay.
So why am I mad at the guy?
Sure. Right.
You know?
Right.
Like, it makes no sense. If
Right.
you disagree on one fucking subject, how you can just throw the person under the fucking bus.
Yeah.
It just makes no sense to me.
Right. Yeah. We tend to do that. Not we, as in you and I specifically, but I think the libertarian movement's such a niche thing that it you know, and by its nature, it is filled with people that do read a lot, and so there's this like feeling of accomplishment that if you, well, I read all of these books, so obviously that means I know something, and there's what that tends to lead to sometimes is a disconnect for the human emotion aspect. And I think over the years, libertarians, I think most of us can see that we've been known as a group of people that maybe they don't have good social skills. Boy, look at me, I just said they like I'm not in it. That was subtle, wasn't it?
Hey, you know when I abandoned libertarianism, just like quick aside, when I abandoned the term libertarian, I mean, I still work with the Institute. And, you know,
Sure.
I mean, everybody knows that. But whenever I was like, I'm not a libertarian, when that first crossed my mind, it was like 2019, and this kid, he was and I'm just going to say it because I've been drinking and I don't give a fuck, he was a Drew Hancock type. And he came and he was like,
Chiefs fan, huh?
Just a shirt. Yeah.
Joking.
He fucking loves the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And he's just a purist. And I was like, well, Tehran is doing the right thing. And he goes, oh, well, like, show me where they're libertarian.
Oh.
So I laid out what Tehran was doing, put articles out there. Well, they look like a bunch of commies. I'm like, yeah, but it's all voluntary. Who
Yeah.
cares?
Right.
Like, it's syndicalist, basically. It's a voluntary syndicalist fucking community.
Yeah.
Who gives it? Now they're introducing capitalism, so I'm sure you'll be much happier with the fucking Mexicans nowadays.
Right.
But, yeah, this is my podcast. I'll say shit like that. But it's like, when he wanted to argue that because they weren't pure libertarians who they never read philosophy or theory. They were doing all of this by the way they interact with each other.
Yeah.
Well, I'm like, read Voltairine de Cleyre, dude.
Yeah.
Read Voltairine de Cleyre on her breakdown of anarchism. She was a fucking collectivist. She was an individualist, and she came to the determination that panarchy is what anarchists would turn out to be. That's like the society we'd end up living in, and which is what Tehran basically is. It's like people voluntarily figuring out how to like work together and operate amongst each other. And so this dude just could not get it through his head that because they weren't libertarian purists, that they were actually living free voluntarily. And I was like, you're a fucking faggot. I don't want anything to do with you. You know, like, and that was the day that I was like, I'm not calling myself a libertarian any fucking more. And like a week after that, I did a podcast with Sherry Voluntary. Like, why aren't we just abandoning this term? Because fuck these people. You know?
There's the concept that I was talking about yesterday that, Buck, you and I've been talking about a lot lately. Cornell's law. This is a law a law of human power dynamics or human social dynamics that everyone needs to know, and it states that there are two types of people, and what it says is it's in every bureaucratic organization there are these two types of people. I'm recognizing this dynamic even outside bureaucratic organizations, where it inevitably devolves into two groups of people. One group works for the goals of the organization. The other group works for the organization itself. And what the Cornell's law states is that inevitably the second group will control the organization. And you recognize this is like the fundamental problem of corruption in politics, that everyone goes into politics with like these starry-eyed ambitions about how we're going to change the world and everything's going to work out just hunky-dory. And they join the organization that proclaims that is the goal of that organization. This is if you've read the Machiavellians, the difference between the formal meaning and the real meaning.
Yes.
A formal meaning is the cover that's provided. It's the story that we tell ourselves about why we get up in the morning.
I got much more out of his book, The Suicide of the West.
I'm in the middle of that one.
I got more out of that. Like I felt like that was a better book.
Yes.
Like
Formal and informal thing though, that was one of the key takeaways for me though. This was
explain it to me because it's been a while since I went through that book.
I can't not see it now. It's what they come out in public in the press conference and say this is why we're doing this versus why maybe they're really doing it or what the actual consequences and actions are of what they're doing.
Right.
So for a really easy example is like the minimum wage. They say, we're going to raise the minimum wage because, poor families need to eat and, they have to be able to a family of four should be supported on a minimum wage, one minimum wage income. They'll say those kinds of things.
Right.
They'll say the minimum wage is too low and so people are starving and whatever.
And it's like, why is somebody with a family of four fucking working for minimum wage?
Right. So that's the formal,
where did they fuck their life
meaning.
up to end up in that situation?
So that's the formal meaning that they give so that people will begin arguing on that basis and ignore the real meaning. And the real meaning is we need to raise the minimum wage so that major corporations can put their competition out of business. We need to secure our market position by making labor so costly that they can't, or by manipulating the immigration.
And originally it was to put minorities out of work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was the real meaning. The real meaning was we're putting minorities out of work.
Right.
Maybe the formal meaning might have been that we're trying to protect white labor.
Right.
That would be the formal meaning. Well, that's the formal meaning. The real meaning is you want to put minorities out of work.
It's like what Hillary Clinton said. I have a public fucking stance and then a private stance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what he points out is that he identified this for the 1400s, that this existed then. This is a fundamental nature of politics, and people will engage, and libertarians fall into this then. They engage on the formal meaning, and they try to argue people into the ground on the basis of this formal meaning. So they come out with all their charts and graphs and all their explanations and their theorems and formulas, and they try to rationalize people because they're operating on the formal level, but they haven't gotten at the real level. The real level is below the surface. So going back to the Cornell's law, you have two different people in the group that call themselves libertarians now. There's the people who care about liberty and who want to advance the cause of liberty, and there's people who like the idea of libertarianism, and they want people to see them as a libertarian, and they want to see their ideas more popular because it makes them feel good when their ideas are popular.
So why do you think those people are interested in libertarianism? Is it being like the rebel? Is it being the outlier?
That could be one reason. It could be because they like the
like
the
it almost
anti-war
makes you feel
stance.
cool to be outside the mainstream.
Right,
like,
Yes.
yeah.
Because again, it gives you that protective blanket where you can go, here's my stance, here's my policies, here's my principles. Oh, too bad they never win.
Yeah, and I
because,
call that libertarian virtue signaling.
It is.
Like,
Exactly. Yes.
that's all
It's people.
it
It's
is.
people who want to be king of the sandbox,
Yeah.
and they're ignoring the rest of the playground.
Yeah.
So everyone's fighting over who's going to be the highest status within the organization, because they're operating on the organizational level. They've lost sight of the actual goals, the reasons why the organization was created in the first.
So which one was Pinochet?
He was.
Ooh.
Was he the virtue signaler or was he the fucking actual guy? Like, was he the
He
real
seemed
deal?
to be the actual guy. I mean,
Knowing how those kinds of things work, my assumption is that he was even still a front man. He was the guy that sent out as like the sort of like the MC, kind of the one who's gonna perform, who's gonna deliver the message, who's gonna serve as the figurehead that everyone can identify themselves with, and then ultimately he would have had.
So
a
was he?
cabal
Do
of
you think he
powerful
was
people
taking
behind the
marching
scenes.
orders?
I'm sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Virtually never is the guy who is in the position of power actually
Making the decision.
the one making all of the decisions. He's always going to have some might call them
Puppet master.
advisors, and
Yes.
some of them might be funders.
He's on strings in
Exactly.
some way. Yeah.
and it's like
Fair
when you
enough.
talk about people like George Soros, just to name one that's more popular. There's people like him that
Klaus.
you'll never know. You'll never know their name. There's people, and to take a political office for those people would be a demotion.
Right.
So there's that's really who's controlling these things behind the scenes. And just on the Pornell's Law thing, we've experienced a very recent example of exactly this, and it comes to the Libertarian Party, which we all know is not particularly powerful by any means, but there's a movement here in Texas to get secession on the ballot for the next election. I believe next
That's
year.
what we
actually.
talked about last time you were on the show, right?
In 20 yeah, we
we
did
talked
talk
about
about
my
Texas.
article, and yeah, okay.
And so it's called Texas, and they're right now getting all of these signatures for this petition to get it. And I believe the case would be that it's part of the Republican primary, essentially, and that's what's going to go through that route. Well, the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus in Texas sent out an email to everyone on their list, which included me, saying, please don't sign this, because if you do...
Wait, that was the Mises Caucus?
Yes.
I knew the Libertarian Party did that.
No, the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus.
Okay,
of
so I
Texas did it.
knew the Libertarian Party of Texas did that on Twitter, like publicly. I did not know the Libertarian Party
Privately, the
Mises
LPMC
Caucus did.
of Texas sent
Well,
out an
and see-
email saying, if you sign this, you then cannot be a delegate for the Libertarian Party.
Signing it is in effect
But
joining
you don't
the
have
Republican
to.
Party,
You don't
right?
have to register as a fucking member of any party in
Correct,
Texas. So
correct.
why the fuck does it matter?
Correct. Well, there's some kind of legalistic issue. Whatever the case, if you sign this, the one thing it will affect, if you are in the Libertarian Party, is you can't be a delegate at the state convention. Now, back to Pornell's Law. The LPMC's mission and goal is not secession or liberty for Texas. It's to take over their political party, which
It's
in
to
effect,
grow the LPMC.
Well, see, this
so
ex-
they're worried about the bureaucracy of the LP.
This
and
explains-
filling those ranks.
This
rather
explains
than
a lot.
secession.
This
Yes,
explains
it does
a lot.
explain a whole lot.
Well, I was in communication with the Texas Nationalist Movement, and they were supposed to be getting in touch with me, and I was going to have several of them on the podcast, and we were going to be talking about Texas, because that's like something
Yes.
I've been interested in that since 2008,
Yes.
right?
That should go beyond political.
Right,
parties.
exactly.
Yes.
But they contacted me, and we were emailing back and forth, and suddenly all communication stopped. And I wonder if it has something to do with the Libertarian Party getting involved, because I'm at the Libertarian Institute, and they know I'm at the Libertarian Institute. I told them I was at the Libertarian
They are
Institute.
the guys that were here yesterday at this event here at Renegade University were like diehard fans of Scott Horton, which was nice to see.
Right.
So I thought
Yeah.
that was really
I
were
got
Bloodsuck
I
Monsters?
got their
right.
card.
Right. Imagine that.
Yeah, I got their card and shit. Like,
Yes.
they seem like very nice guys. But I'm wondering if they stopped talking with me about moving forward with what we were talking about because of the Libertarian Party's stance on the entire situation.
Could be something like that. Yeah, that was...
Which is stupid because you're like cutting off your nose to spite your face.
And that's what, it's funny, when I was younger in the Libertarian Party, active in this, one of my bosses when I was a kid said, you know, I kind of agree with you on a lot of your political stances, but you guys just keep cutting off your nose to spite your face. At the time, I'm like, no, we don't. We have this, you know. And I look back more and more and go, damn, he sure was right about a lot of stuff he told me. Right. Funny how that happens.
Well, and I think this is why I kind of like lean more agorist. And like one of the things that people misunderstand Matt about is the whole make more money thing. And I think what you're doing is you're coming at it from this argument like Tom Woods lays out about like improving your skills, or Harry Brown laid out in how I found freedom in an unfree world.
Yes.
Right? So you're talking about like taking personal responsibility, and you're just doing it in shorthand. And okay, so people are taking it the wrong way. Like that's fine, but it's a shorthand way of saying, hey, look, you have to take responsibility for your own fucking life.
Yes.
And this is why I like people like Carl Hess. That dude was a fucking monster, dude. Never paid a fucking income tax in his life. Never went to jail. He fucking flew overseas and fought with revolutionary movements in different fucking countries. Carl Hess was a beast of a man.
And wrote speeches for Barry Goldwater.
Yeah. I mean, he was a Renaissance man. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was a real dude. And so I look up to people like that guy. Like, whenever like somebody asks me if I should read somebody on political theory, who do I read? And I'm like, Carl Hess, because that motherfucker did it. He was out there doing that shit. You know, and he did more in his lifetime in 30 years. He turned New Jersey, like a town in New Jersey, into a commune where they were growing their own fucking vegetables and shit. You know, like
actually doing something.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, and he called himself an agorist. That's why I call myself an agorist, because I aspire to be that guy.
Yeah.
That's my hero. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, people that look up to like Murray Rothbard kind of take on the personality of Rothbard. Yeah. Which, I mean, my buddy Michael Harris, who's an attorney in Dallas, and like we're really good friends. He studied under Rothbard, right? Yeah. Like Hoppe was on his doing his master's at the time, so Hoppe was kind of like the stand-in. Like I don't remember how all that works, but Hoppe was like the stand-in, but Rothbard was actually the professor. And like he studied under Rothbard in Vegas.
He had both of them?
Yeah.
Golly.
Oh. Yeah. And so like when I talked to Michael Harris, he's like, oh yeah, like yada yada yada. And I gather from these young guys, they're picking up on the intelligence of Rothbard, but they're not picking up on what being a man is.
Correct.
I mean, Rothbard was a Jew at a hard time to be a Jew.
Yes.
You know, like like they don't understand what he went through.
Yeah.
You know, they don't understand that Hoppe at that time, he was, as Michael Harris would call him, very German.
Yeah.
You know, that's how Michael would say it. He was very German, but he was taking a liberty stance from a German perspective at a time where it was very unpopular to be a German.
Yep.
You know?
Well, Rothbard, through his whole professor career, could have got a lot of money if he wanted to change his opinions and the way he spoke, the things he spoke on, just tweaked it around the edges. He could have made money. Same with Mises, same thing. They didn't do it. So I always thought that was interesting with him. And Hoppe, to be as politically incorrect as we know he is, don't forget, the 90s were bad too when the Clinton years with PC stuff. And, I mean, they ousted him from UNLV because of that kind of thing. So those guys both faced that stuff.
I don't remember where I read it, but Murray Rothbard and Alan Greenspan a couple of tiny decisions and they could have traded lives.
Wow.
They were born within days or hours of each other in like the same neyborhood and within basically the same culture, and they came up. They like went to college at the same time. They graduated.
They went to the
time.
same college, didn't they?
They may have.
I think they went to the same.
This is
college.
also, by the way, just since we're here at Renegade University, this is very similar, with Thaddeus and Kamala Harris.
Yes.
Like very close to each other when they were young.
Oh, don't tell Josh Childress, because Josh Childress hates Kamala, and he.
Well, so does Thaddeus Russell. He knows the
Josh has hated Kamala since before anybody else knew who Kamala was.
Yeah, well, she grew
because
up right
he was
near
in
that.
border. He hated her when he was Border Patrol.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Too bad. Josh is gone. He could tell us all those stories. I love Josh. That's my dude. I was so happy to get to meet him in person.
What was your favorite part? Well, I mean, I know you said showing Cody Wilson the stuff from Top Lobster and
and then
him to Scott.
having Scott and him.
Speaking wise, were you specifically looking forward to one person, or did you just kind of want to see the whole thing and you didn't just want to take it all in?
Well, let's take it this way. I was most surprised by Jack.
Okay, I wasn't surprised. I was most looking forward to him only because I had just spoken with him on my show.
And I'm not even talking about his speech. He came to our Airbnb Friday night and hung out with us all night Friday night.
Oh, no, he's cool as fuck.
And I was like, I had listened. It is your bestie. Yeah. And so he's coming on year 0. We're gonna make that happen. It's gonna be a really interesting conversation. But I was most surprised by him because I had heard like about 40 minutes of his episode with Thad over like 6 different tries to listen to it, and shit just kept happening. I just never was able to finish it. And my buddy Gord is the one who told Thad about Jack. And so that's how Thad found out about Jack. And so I'm sitting there Friday night just bullshitting with Jack, and I'm like, I can't believe like the first thing he impressed me with is he knew the movie Lost Highway, which nobody knows that movie. And he's like, oh yeah, I just did an episode on that. I was like, no shit. I was like, nobody knows this fucking movie. It's one of my favorite fucking movies. And then he had me sit there and name my 5 favorite movies of all time. And he was just like, oh, okay, I see how you think. And he's like breaking down my psychology based upon my 5 favorite movies.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it was like so much fun to have that conversation with him. Like I never knew that I would have that much in common with this guy. And so sitting there having that conversation with him, that was one of my favorite moments, just because I was so surprised by it. But as far as this isn't going to be a shock because I love the guy and I've had him on the show. Hotep Jesus is just a monster.
Yeah.
Like, I just love Hotep.
Yeah.
And Scott Horton is a beast.
Yeah.
Like, and so anytime, and to hear Hotep Jesus ask Scott Horton a question, I was like, oh man, this podcast has to happen. This podcast has to happen, like, and so like things like that, it was like, I wasn't, the only thing that really shocked me though was Jack, like, in how he and I like really bonded and got along.
Right.
But I want to get to that. You do have a game coming up, and we're at 40 minutes in. What time's your game start?
Scott in like an hour and a half. It was an hour ago.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
No, it was 40 minutes ago.
Guess we got to wrap soon.
Yeah. So we said we were going to keep this short, but we'll do it again for sure. Mm-hmm. So this was your house. So like what was it that shocked you most about the entire weekend, and what was your favorite part of the entire weekend?
Shocked me? I don't know that anything specifically shocked me. I guess the fact that this is my property makes, and there's so many people here, you think, I hope the neighbors don't get upset. I hope there's no law enforcement interaction. So I wasn't shocked that none of that happened, but I was more like, okay, cool. After yesterday evening hit, I was like, all right, we're going to be good. Because I knew Cody Wilson talks very quiet. Yeah. And I thought, well, then when I'm up there with that, we kind of have a, chill, mellow tone too. I didn't think there'd be any like loud and upsetting the neighbors. Although I will say, some of all the discussions were good, and there was certainly a lot of buzzwords thrown around. And I was like, well, I hope they are cool with these words. The thing I like.
Yeah, I heard Jack like came out. Guns blazing. I missed the beginning part of his.
There were N-bombs dropped, F-bombs dropped, C-bombs dropped throughout various speeches. Usually by people that are allowed to say these things, but still, when it's just there's some.
I may or may not have had to send my 8-year-old into the house.
Yeah. The thing I liked most, for me, what I liked most was hanging with like my friends. You guys, Matt, Tho Bishop was with us.
I thought it was awesome. I got to meet him.
To chill out. Matt and Tho and I are in this group text thing with a bunch of people, and so it's weird. Like you text talk every day, and then of course we've talked on podcasts, but it's nice to talk in real life, chill out, hang out. Matt's boy Eastwood, his wife Amy, it was just nice to just like chill with these people. Jack, what I thought was awesome about Jack is, he sounds the way he sounds, and then you meet him and he's giant, and he's wearing Wranglers and cowboy boots. Amazing. And of course he smelled. I also caught myself. I didn't know he was right next to me, and I was standing there watching maybe Scott or someone, and then. Like, damn, it smells good around here. And I look, and Jack's standing next to him. No wonder.
He told me he's coming to Childeberg next year.
Nice.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I told him. He's like, get my number. I will fucking be there. So like, we're gonna have Jack out camping with us at Childeberg.
Nice.
So
nice.
yeah.
Yes. The whole thing, I guess that it was pulled off successfully in a small town, and it truly shows me that, wow, the neighbors really are cool. The cops really are cool. No one's worried about this stuff. And one quick crazy thing that happened, a neighbor called my wife Friday night as this started ramping up, and Brittany was like, uh-oh, and the lady said, Brittany, this is your neighbor so-and-so, and she's like, great. And she goes, the house on the other side of us, they're out of town, so y'all can park in their driveway if you need to. And it's like, oh, so this is a very nice small town. So those kind of things are just nice to realize. I'm glad we're not in Austin, Texas. We're in a small, sweet little country town of Lockhart with still some fun things to do, as you guys experienced, and some good barbecue. Yeah, what a crazy event. It's still surreal a little bit. It won't hit me till after the Raiders win this evening, and I'm just enjoying that, and it's like, dang.
And then everything was perfect.
Yeah.
Everything went off without a hitch.
Yeah.
How about you, Matt? Like, number one, before we get to your like favorite parts of the weekend and if anything surprised you about the weekend, I want to ask you one thing that I think is beneficial. Was there any culture shock?
That's a good question.
Not for me, really. No, I went to high school in a tiny little college out in the middle of nowhere in the woods of British Columbia, and then I went to college.
That's right. I
at a
forgot you
farm
went to fucking high school in Canada.
Yep.
Fucking Canadians. Goddamn Canuckapult. I need a Canuckapult.
Yeah. I was basically a Canuck there for a while. And it's funny that Canadians have the reputation that they do for being a bunch of pussies, because some of the hardest people I've ever met.
Oh no,
Canadians.
they're the great.
They're
Coop,
absolutely.
That's where Coop lives.
Yeah, they're just
and
absolute
that's where
savages.
Gord's from. They're the hardest dudes I've ever met in my fucking life. You know.
Yep.
Sweet as fuck.
Oh.
Sweet as fuck.
Yeah.
Remember the car club that drove down to Houston
Yeah.
from fucking Canada?
Yeah.
Oh my God! We'll have to tell you all that story later.
Then I went to college in a farm town in Eastern Washington. That was actually we were driving here today from the hotel, and I told Amy, this really feels like Walla Walla. It has that. It's like there's farm, but then there's a little bit of city. You know, you got a couple fast food restaurants and some hotels and stuff, and nice nightlife. They got like an old town part of town. So it felt very familiar. The weather is not familiar. We're us West Coasters. Us West Coasters don't do the humidity, and so I mean, my whole shirt is literally, I could wring it out right now. I haven't been doing anything but just sitting here in the shade. So.
My buddy asked me yesterday. We walked inside, and he goes, "How are you not sweating?" I was like, "Dude, it's like 50% humidity here. It's like 180,000% humidity where I live."
Yeah.
And I walked in this morning, and I was like, I'm kind of impressed that the mosquitoes weren't biting. Like, I saw no mosquitoes. And the dude was like, I got like 40 bites on my leg.
They ask my feet.
Like, you can't.
What?
You can't walk out of my house without a fucking swarm jumping on you. I just live in the swamp. Like it's just like this is nothing. This is dry.
I don't do wet heat. Yeah.
No, but all right. So as far as the weekend goes, like when what speeches were your favorites?
I love Hotep Jesus. I love Hotep. When he went on Joe Rogan.
I thought it was funny
then.
when I asked him why Uncle Hotep wasn't here.
That was funny too, and he didn't seem to.
He took it so seriously, and Gord like dared me to do it. So I was like, all right, like whatever. It's like the last question before we go to lunch. I'm like, all right, fuck it.
Yeah, when he did Joe Rogan, he came out to L.A. and Amy and I had the honor of taking him out to dinner and just talking to him, picking his brain for 3 or 4 hours, and we got into some crazy shit, just a lot of esoteric stuff. And the dude is just one of the sharpest people I've ever met. So seeing him here in this environment and talking to people here was really cool. And then I didn't know anything about Jack. I'd heard of him. I just had started the episode with him and Buck, and I got pulled away.
I haven't listened to that.
Now I want to go. I definitely want to go.
Yeah, I definitely want to hear it. Yeah, now that I met him,
he's a fascinating person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now you can kind of put that personality with
Right.
it. So you're like, oh, okay,
Right.
I get it. I get where he's coming from.
He breaks a lot of molds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
I told the first time I ever talked to Hotep Jesus on my podcast, I told him, I was like, look, I have a bone to pick with you. And he was like, what's up? Like, it was the first thing I said to him, like on the podcast. I was like, I got a bone to pick with you. And he's like, wait, what did I do? I was like, my mom's a fucking Hotep. He's just fucking dying laughing. So
There's a lot of older white women that are obsessed with him.
Yeah.
I don't know if you.
that might just be
The Moz.
the big dick.
It could be.
The motherfucker's swinging.
But there is a thing. There is a thing that exists.
But
with him.
yeah, no,
Middle-aged
my mom's a coon ass. She's a redheaded coon ass, so she ain't got no sense. She's listening to this now. Hi, mom. She ain't got no sense. So it's like it was funny. Pete introduced her because she listens to Pete's show. So Pete introduced her to Hotep Jesus, and she's like, "I love this guy. He's so cute." So we sent a picture of me and HJ like hanging out like yesterday, and we sent it to her. And she's like, "Oh my god, he's so fucking adorable." You know, like, those white.
There go your son.
Yeah.
The white girls love them some Jesus.
I noticed that.
So
Yeah.
but no, it was a great weekend, Buck. I'm glad y'all were able to pull it off, man.
Me too. Fucking badass.
Yeah.
It was so fun.
It was amazing.
It was beyond what I thought it would be.
Yes.
And
That's what she said.
yeah, it was almost as big as I expected.
I see what you did there. Yeah, it was like twice as big as I expected.
I couldn't imagine that it would have been this big.
That's what she said. Are we gonna stay on this joke for too much longer?
We're gonna start booing.
I thought y'all were still talking about Hotep Jesus.
We're about to wrap. 'Cause I'm about
Yes,
to go watch my team.
we're wrapping up right now.
Dad heard us talking.
Yeah.
All right.
Speaking
Well,
of
Dad,
Hotep,
I didn't even know he was still here. He should have came and joined.
Yeah.
Because he could have said hi. I got an episode coming up with him too. He and I were talking yesterday, so we got something in the works.
Awesome.
But man, it was great. I love seeing you again. But
Yeah.
you know,
It's always
and
fun.
I'll hug your big ass anytime I get a chance to. You fucking, there's nothing more comforting than hugging Buck Johnson. It's just like muscle is just like encompassing you. And you're like, oh, daddy, thank
Alex
you.
Hatch. That was more comforting. Have you hugged her? Do you know Alex?
No.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, she was at
She's
the
big-
comedy show last night
Yeah,
with
she
the curly
was.
hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She keeps hugging me, and last night I was like, "My God, you give the best hugs because they're just like."
Oh,
and yeah.
Beatrix, you have competition.
Yeah.
Oh, I see that.
You
I'm
see
thinking,
there? It's
"Who is
Alex."
this?" I'm like, listen, yeah. Who the hell is this Alex?
And Matt, it was great seeing you in person as well, man.
Yeah, you too,
Like,
man.
We had a blast. It was really good. Like being able to sit down with a lot of my friends that have been friends for years online and getting to see them in person. We saw each other obviously at
Yeah.
Schoenberg, but I mean, it was just a lot of fun, man. And I really appreciate you hosting this at your house and allowing us to come and invade your territory and stick around till there's nobody fucking left in your fucking yard.
Closed it down.
Yeah, and make a mess and do all that shit, dude. This was great, and I hope we do it again very soon.
Yeah, me too.
Likewise, man.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Tommy.
it. Thank you.
All right.
If you're gonna play this game of pick and choose, well, it's a game that was made for you to lose. It doesn't really matter how many times, it's the same old worn out stories, same old lines. They're all pointing dirty fingers in hypocrisy, bragging on their feats of mediocrity again. Never really making any kind of change, but they keep on getting re-elected, and I find that strange. And that's why I say fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants out of taking our freedoms. Yeah, I said fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants out of taking our freedoms. What's it gonna take for you to see that we're living in a rigged democracy? People stand in line for the things that they've been choosing, paying no attention to the rights they keep on losing. But they all gather in the rallies and they chant their names, on goddamn well that it's all gonna be the same. Just 4 more years of war and taxes, 4 more years of them grinding down their axes. And that's why I say fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants out of taking our freedoms. Yeah, fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants out of taking our freedoms. Cause we don't even need them, we'll never celebrate the tyrants that are taking our freedom. Fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them, we'll never celebrate the tyrants that are taking our